They were sitting there, all 22 of them, and I looked around and I said, now, if we get caught, what will happen to me? They said, oh, you'll get deported in 24 hours and we'll go to prison for 3 years. I said, you're kidding. How many of you have been in prison for your faith? Out of 22, 18 raised their hands. I thought, no way. I looked at him and I said, you 22 people, how many people do you oversee? Because they were all of these small group leaders, underground church leaders in the Hunan province. I said, how many, if you counted up all the people under your jurisdiction, how many would it be? And they counted them up and they said, little over 20 million. I said, what? See, we forget there's 1.3 billion people in China. This is crazy. Well, I had 15 Bibles and I passed them out. Obviously 7 didn't get them. And I said, let's turn to 2 Peter chapter 1 and we're going to read it. And just then one lady handed hers to somebody next to her. And I thought, interesting. Well, we turned there anyway, and as we started reading it, I understood why she gave it away. She had memorized the whole thing. She just recited the whole chapter. When it was done, I went over to her at a break and I said, you recited the whole chapter. She says, oh yes, I've memorized many chapters. I said, where did you memorize so many chapters? She said, in prison. I said, you have much time in prison. So I said, but don't they confiscate the Bible? She said, yes. So people bring in scriptures written on pieces of paper and they bring it in. So I said, but then if they find that piece of paper on you, won't they confiscate that? She said, oh yes, that's why you memorize it as fast as you can. Because even though they can take the paper away, they can't take what's hidden in your heart. I thought, wow. Well, after 3 days, you fall in love with these people. And when it was done, I said, how can I pray for you? I'm going to go back to America. You guys have been just so wonderful. How can I pray for you? They said, you know, Wayne, you guys can gather like this whenever you want to in America. We can't. Could you pray that one day we'll be just like you? And I looked at him and I said, I will not do that. Big incredulous eyes looked at me and they said, why? I said, because you guys rode a train for 13 hours to get here. In my country, if you've got to drive more than an hour, people don't come. You sat on a wooden floor for 3 days. In my country, if people have to sit more than 40 minutes, they leave. You sat not only here for 3 days on a hard wooden floor, but you did it without air conditioning. In my country, if it's not padded pews and air conditioning, people don't often come back. In my country, we have an average of 2 Bibles per family. We don't read any of them. You hardly have any Bibles, and you memorize them from pieces of paper. I will not pray that we become like, you become like us, but I will pray that we become just like you.
The Bible said there really is a heaven. There really is a hell. And you're going to spend your eternity in one of those 2 places. There is no neutral. There is no purgatory. There is no rehabilitation center. When eternity comes, you will either be ready for heaven or you will be ready for hell. I had a newspaper reporter one time interviewing me saying, we saw in the advertising that one night you're preaching on the hard truth about hell. I said, that's true. That is one of the messages that God laid upon my heart for this Lost Lamb event, and I will be preaching on that. He said, so you really believe in a literal hell? I said, no, I believe in the Bible, and the Bible says there's a literal hell. And I want you to know that this is important for people to understand the question that he asked me. How can preachers say that God is a God of love, and God is a God of mercy, and God is a God of forgiveness, and yet preach a message entitled The Hard Truth About Hell? If God is a God of love, how could he ever send somebody to a place as horrific as the hell that's in the Bible? I said, let me help you with that, because that's a great question. But the answer is, God is not going to send anybody to hell. You don't decide, well, God is this or God. No, God is God. You decide personally your own fate. No one goes to hell because God sent them there. If you'll read the Bible, you'll find out that if you end up in the eternal judgment of God in a place the Bible calls hell, you'll not be there because God sent you there. You will be there because when he offered a hand of mercy and a hand of forgiveness and gave you an opportunity to make peace with him, you spat on that hand, turned your back, and walked away from him. You chose hell. God didn't choose hell. He said in John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish. That word perish in the original Greek text means face judgment for unrepented sin. God said, I don't want you to perish, but to have everlasting life. And he made a pathway for that plan through the cross of Calvary and his sinless Son, Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish.